Friedrich Merz, leader of the centre-right Christian Democrats, celebrating at party headquarters in Berlin. The question is, can he deliver the change that Germans voted for? Or can we expect the usual return to the status quo? The CDU and their Bavarian sister party, the CSU, took just under 30% of the vote. But the real winner was the Alternative for Germany, which doubled its slice of the pie from 2021, the last election, to over 20%. In an election that was overshadowed by Donald Trump's return to office.
There is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Just one day after an Islamic car ramming attack in Munich, Vice President J.D. Vance attended the city's security conference to lecture European leaders about their subversion of the old continent's democracy, as he more or less described it.
Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations.
Now this, by the way, from a man who endorses his boss's attempt to overturn the result of a legitimate presidential election.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Who lambasts restrictions on free speech in Britain, but apparently can't find anything bad to say about Vladimir Putin's Russia.
I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't.
And whose administration, on the day Mr. Vance upbraided his hosts in Munich, was using the criminal justice system back home to blackmail the mayor of New York City into supporting its policies.
Well, I don't know about it. I mean, obviously I'm not involved in that.
But hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. And just because Mr. Vance smiles at his own team's trashing of democratic institutions and norms doesn't mean he's wrong about the state of European liberalism.
No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration.
Elites in government and media blame extremism and far-right agitators when, having been excluded from mainstream public discourse, voters turn to political parties that do articulate their views. The reason parties like the AfD in Germany and France's National Rally are surging is precisely because the opinions they represent have been delegitimized by mainstream parties.
Die illegale Migration und Rechtlosigkeit beenden, Straftäter und rechtswidrig ins Land gekommene abschieben, Sicherheit im öffentlichen Raum wiederherstellen, schlicht die Durchsetzung von Recht und Gesetz.
This is just one of the reasons why the AfD saw its vote share more than double in Sunday's election.
I think it could decide the entire fate of Europe, maybe the fate of the world. That is the significance of this election.
The typically messy process by which German coalitions are formed means it will take some time for a new government to emerge, because the winning Christian Democratic Union, which sees the AfD as a pariah, has said it won't work with them.
Ich dafür sorgen möchte, dass die Politik auch meiner Partei so weit korrigiert wird, dass eine solche Partei wie die sogenannte Alternative für Deutschland in unserem Lande nicht mehr gebraucht wird. Das möchte ich erreichen.
More likely seems to be a coalition between the CDU and the centre-left Social Democrats, the largely discredited party of outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Yet another stitch-up among elites like this will only feed the impression of collusive illiberalism that characterises Europe's establishment. But it will also underscore the much larger existential threat to the continent, its chronic economic torpor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth.
Today, the economic gulf between Europe and the US is widely known and getting wider. Europe lags behind not merely in demand growth, but in the investment to bolster productivity, raise living standards and revive competitiveness.
Looking at the German business environment, we see a lot of regulation and bureaucracy at the moment. More and more companies are really considering shifting production and skills outside Germany.
To have any hope of lifting itself from its slump, Europe needs a dose of economic liberalism to free up markets and more continent-wide economic integration to develop the sort of wide and deep capital and services markets that give the US a big advantage.
For the past 75 years, Germany has been built very much on consensus, stability-oriented, lots of checks and balances in the political system, and that makes rapid change very difficult.
Germany is also restricted by a debt brake introduced during the financial crisis, which limits annual federal deficits as a proportion of GDP.
We have a bad environment concerning infrastructure, innovation, education, and climate change or climate protection, as well as security. These are the 5 areas requiring massive additional investment, which stands in contrast and conflicts with the debt brake, which does not make that possible. So they need to solve that issue.
At the same time, voters live in an age of accelerating insecurity. They want more protection. And parties like the AfD have been pushing not only to roll back the liberal establishment's ambit, but to keep and even strengthen the costly social protections in labour markets, pensions, healthcare and education.
If the next government is not changing the corporate policy, how they treat companies, how they work with the industry, significantly in the way to be more friendly again for the companies and for investments, more and more companies will go away.
In Europe, illiberal democracy and illiberal economics go hand in hand.
Make Germany great again!
The new populists won't give us one without the other. But it doesn't look like they'll get a say.
As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership.